Hello, my name is Mark from jazzguitarlessons.net and you're watching Kenny Burrell Untold. Born in 1931 in Detroit, Michigan, Kenny Burrell is one of jazz guitar's most singular artists. While of the same generation as guitarists like Joe Bass, Jim Hall, and Jimmy Rainey, his sound came out of a different musical experiences and a particular geographical reality. Let's see what we can learn from Kenny Burrell. So the first step is play the blues like you mean it. Detroit's musical environment assured that Burrell was steeped in the blues. He embraced it and relished in it. To quote the man himself, the blues is part of my heritage, part of my surroundings growing up in Detroit, on the radio, on records, in clubs, on the street. So, like most guitarists, the blues was what I first learned to play. In my earliest jam session, we always played the blues. It felt natural, and I will never deny that's part of who I am. So that's a great quote from Kenny Burrell himself, right? So every jazz guitarist plays the blues at some point. It's built into our repertoire, but learning the harmonic progression to various blues forms and running sophisticated changes and substitutions is a far cry from the kind of musical devices a player can learn from the greats of electric blues, like T-Bone Walker, Muddy Waters, B.B. King. For these guys, nuances of tone, touch, and subtle pitch inflections take on as much importance as a hip substitution or an altered scale does for the average jazzer. And Kenny Burrell absorbed these lessons as he synthesized a jazz guitar sound that was equal parts cerebral, introspection, and the other part was soulful abandon. So what can you do yourself to get closer to an authentic blues sound in your playing? That could take a lifetime, of course, but start with the kind of sound that blues players embrace. Kenny Burrell had a slightly different sound from the other players of his era. Part of this was the equipment. Early on he played on short scale Gibsons with P90 pickups and Charlie Christian style pickups. The hot single coil tones produced by these magnets has a particularly pleasant compression when pushing the favorite amp of Burrell at the time, which was a Fender Deluxe, also known as a Tweed Deluxe or 5E3. So these amps broke up fairly early and produced more mid-range than later blackface amps, which were very mid-scooped. So even when we set for a bright tone, there was a pleasant mellowness to Burrell's sound on his early records. By the late 60s, Kenny Burrell would be playing the Gibson Super 400. These had bucking pickups, of course, but they were also long-scale guitars, and the extra overtones from that 25.5-inch scale, it seems to compensate for the mellowness of the pickup. Now, once you have the sound together, try to incorporate some of the sound, meaning listen to the real blues and how those players phrase and touch the instrument. So many novice and intermediate players never get past the mindset of insert blues scale here. Scales are the least of it. The blues is melody too, so if you're a guitar player, you've played the blues, but maybe you need to revisit the blues in a new way. So forget all that jazz for a while and just play. Kenny Burrell used the blues as a means to express his deep rhythmic vocabulary, and these explorations clearly spilled over into other aspects of his playing as a kind of creative feedback loop, if you want. So check out his solo on Las Vegas Tango from Gil Evans' Individualism of Gil Evans, great album. The pentatonics and the riffy passes are there, but mixed in with that spacey kind of impressionism and its pure inspiration. From the same record, Kenny Burrell's modal explorations on Time of the Barracudas features bluesy runs and fast bursts of virtuosity. Both examples also show what a great ensemble player he was and why Kenny Burrell was so in demand as a studio guitarist. So in short, let the blues be the means by which you develop the intuitive and instinctive side of your playing. Don't let the simplicity of the blues be a safety net or a means to avoid taking chances. Cut loose. Play by touch, by ear, and by the seat of your pants, as we say. So the blues is a deep well. So do like Kenny Burrell and drink from that well. After a run of dates with Dizzy Gillespie and touring opportunity with Illinois Jacket, a young Kenny Burrell nonetheless chose to go to school. So he enrolled at Wayne State University to study composition and theory. His efforts would serve him well. The flip side of this incredibly authentic blues sound is that delicate sophistication he would demonstrate on ballads and the driving block chords excursions that crop up mid-flight on more up-tempo tunes. So whether this degree in music at school, in theory and composition, had anything to do with that, we can never know for sure, but there might be a connection there, right? Burrell is a legitimate jazz legend who lived the life and learned the music from the originators of the music. He's also an educator and director of jazz studies at UCLA presently. The program grew out of the course he was taught since 1978, dedicated to the life and music of Duke Ellington. And in 1996, the school asked him to spearhead the creation of a full jazz program, which he did, of course. So to quote Kenny Burrell again, as human beings we tend to appreciate something that's taken a long time to put together, he said. But when someone just flips something off like a jazz improvisation, we tend to say, well, maybe that's accidental or it doesn't take as much forethought or serious thinking. What they don't understand, and what we try to teach here every day, is the sophistication and the complexity of what it takes to create a jazz performance, whether it's a single phrase or a whole evening, end quote. So what does this all mean for you? Get learning. You don't necessarily need a post-secondary education to play jazz, though debates about that seem to crop up with increasing frequency nowadays. But what you do need is community. So the players who created this music and carried the torch for a large part of its history did not have the luxury of a university education in jazz. That simply did not exist until the later part of the 20th century. But they had a completely different reality with regards to playing opportunities, so playing in public, jamming, etc. A university jazz program provides more than just classes in jazz harmony, improv, jazz history, etc. So the school is a chance for you to network with, session with, hang with, and practice with other musicians, and if you're lucky, above your level. That's what happened to me, basically. So now, is a formal education out of reach? Well, in the internet age, nothing is ever really out of reach. The information is out there, the theory, the licks, the chords, heck, every record. jazzguitarlessons.net, there's a lot of lessons, but it's only like 1% of what's available online. But think of this, a Wi-Fi connection still can't replace a community. So if you don't already live in a city with at least some semblance of a scene, like a jazz scene, move to one ASAP. Then start attending every jam session you can, which is basically what I've done personally. Set up your own sessions and play with people you meet there, and play as often as you can, because you have to apply this stuff a lot, all the time. And if you're already a player of a certain level of accomplishment, be sure to pass on this knowledge to players who ask. Teach lessons. Think about what you're doing, which is what I'm doing right now. You'd be amazed at how much having to explain these ideas to someone else forces you to clarify your thought process. This, in turn, makes you into a better musician. So the third tip here is trusting your instincts. This is something we learned from Kenny Burrell, the ones you cultivated through deep study and contemplation. Basically, Kenny Burrell is a guitarist who plays with the fire of a blues player, the swagger of a bebopper, and the beauty of a balladeer. You know what I mean? It's like he has really nice musicality to him. So he also possesses a refined skill set that made him sought after studio musician at home on sessions with all kinds of music. So he's an instinctive player who can also seamlessly blend into an ensemble when necessary in a huge variety of styles, while always retaining his personality. Kenny Burrell's an all-time great. You could do worse than to model your playing on this blues playing from a university graduate from Detroit, Michigan. So my name is Mark from jazzguitarlessons.net. Improve your jazz guitar playing with a real teacher, and this has been Kenny Burrell Untold.